Hey, we're going to find out if we're live. Thanks for jumping in. I'll just give it a second to see if anyone joins. Um, Coming to you, you have a substitute teacher today, substitute proctor. I said this on Twitter. Let's take a look. Do we have anyone chatting? Let's see. Hello. Thanks, Greg. Thanks for telling me we're live. I'm not usually, I'm not usually your solo host, your solo cruise director. It's usually Boiler Dad. I think he's in traffic heading back, or he's at AJ's. Chris Lichty says I'm live, unlike the Boilermakers. That's very good. I like that. So we're here to talk, probably briefly, about Purdue losing 26-21. 26-20. I think I put 26-21 in the title, but that's okay because, it doesn't really matter. Purdue loses in overtime. And I have some notes. I have some thoughts. And I was sitting there thinking as I'm writing all this stuff down, man, I'm doing more prep than a lot of people would do for this kind of game because Purdue, once again, did not take advantage of a golden opportunity. Boiler Dad talked about this being the Alamo that they needed to, this was it. This was their best remaining chance, and I would agree. This was the best remaining chance they had to win. Beautiful day. I want to say a couple quick things. One, it looks like the fans showed out again. I wasn't there, but it sure looked like the stadium was near full. I heard some noise. You can't say enough about Purdue's fans coming out for games like this because, man, this is a tough product. This is a really tough product to watch. I did notice in Coach Walter's press conference, he again talked about, the noise gets the loudest when things are tough, and you got to tune out the noise. And I was just thinking this week about the fact that he made a comment like this. I think after Notre Dame, it was early on. He made a comment about how, you're going to get noise from the outside. Like, you're generating the noise and the aggravation from fans. So I hate it when coaches, when they're in a tailspin like this, use that bullshit and say, we're going to tune out all the people hating on you. Yeah. Well, nobody's really coming down on the players. You could, I guess, in some cases, but I think today's game, my observation was they showed fight. They showed heart. You can say whatever you want about this team. They were down 17-3 late in the first half, right? It wasn't a second half comeback because they scored that one very late in the first half, but you're down 2 touchdowns. And for this team, I don't know about you, but when I looked at them down 2 touchdowns, I thought they're done. There's no coming back from double-digit deficits for this team. And then Purdue went and it was 17-3 for the remainder of regulation. So Purdue, for the second time in 3 games, has really balled out in the second half. I mean, the defense, Northwestern's not very good offensively, so I don't think you can hang too much on that. But they did keep, they kept an opponent under 50. That's a plus, right? Kept an opponent at 20 for regulation. That's pretty good. Even a bad opponent, holding a team to 20, I'm fine with that, right? Like, because you could argue if you hold a team to 20, college football, you should probably win. Modern college football, right? Holding a team to 20 for 4 quarters, that should be a win 90% of the time, right? I mean, unless you're playing a team with a great defense, and I don't think Northwestern has that either. But the difference, what they do have, and I've heard a couple people, including some of my compatriots at Ball Sports, talk about this. There are teams out there that are just more organized than Purdue, right? They know their identity, and they know what they do well, and they stick to that, right? Northwestern's not very good, but they're 4-5 now. And like one of the games we all watched that we thought you could see that they were organized and they were in better shape than Purdue was when they lost to IU. They lost by, I think, 2 touchdowns or 17 or something, but they had hung with them for the first half. They did everything they could do and that they could do well, and IU was just better, and that's fine. That happens. But it just shows you that this team, they did it today. They did what they do well. They just kept grinding away, and they didn't let the blowing the lead bother them, right? So like I said, Purdue showed heart. Before I go any further, though, I should thank our sponsors. I'm sure Boiler Dad is at AJ's right now. So if you want to go get a hug He gives the best hugs. So swing on over to AJ's on Vine and go on in and get yourself some satisfaction that you may have been lacking this afternoon in Ross Aid. And then, of course, go to Homefield and Homefield Apparel and enter Boiled25 at checkout and get 15% off your first order. They have some Black Friday stuff coming out. They have a 30% off Black Friday sale coming. So just heads up on that. Purdue was better today on a few things. Like there was a few things cleaned up. Like if we're looking for stuff to be positive about, Purdue only had 2 penalties for 20 yards. Northwestern had 9 for 85. Purdue had 16 first downs. I didn't check, but that's probably their best, right? I mean, leaving aside the Indiana State game, Northwestern had 19. Total yards, this bothers me a little. Northwestern, not a very good offensive team. They had 424 yards. Purdue had 337. Northwestern threw for over 300. They rushed for 122. Purdue rushed for 47. That's tough. That's tough to come back from. Hudson Card played for the first time since Wisconsin, right? He was 21 of 37 for 267 and a touchdown. I thought Huddy played well. Ryan Brown was 3 of 3 for 15 yards. And then, of course, Shamar Rigby had that interesting trick play pass. I always think it's funny when you do those lateral trick plays when it's not even lateral, it's just totally backwards. And you're like, well, there's no doubt this guy's throwing the ball. And it turned out to be a very weird it got the first down and it led to a touchdown. And speaking of that touchdown, I want to call out Devin Mockabee too for, he only had 29 yards rushing. He was the leading rusher, the only guy in double figures for rushing. And he had that touchdown where he just refused to stop moving his legs. And my reaction to that was like, this is where you should remember, like when you get despondent about Purdue sports or about Purdue football, and you'll hear us often talk about how we don't blame the players. We don't come down on the players. That's why, because you've got guys like that. He's not the only one who's still working hard, right? Like that's a guy who just never stops trying to show out well. And I can say that I appreciate that. I think a lot of people really, really appreciate that. I know Maccabee's pretty beloved. I've never heard somebody say something like negative about the guy. He embodies, I think you would agree, what it means, right? To be a Boilermaker, to fight hard, to never quit. He never changes his attitude. I love it. I love it, and I appreciate it, and I'm disappointed that we're wasting that. Bunch of guys had receiving yards. Purdue had, let me see here, 9 different guys catch the ball. Okay, 290 yards through the air. Like I said, there were a few things that went better, I guess, but you still saw defensive breakdowns. Like Walters was asked about the defensive breakdowns and kind of said, I think his words were something like, not sure what you can do. Or he seemed like he wasn't sure what he could do. Like guys just not reading assignments right and guys being in the wrong place was kind of, I'm not quoting him directly, but stuff like that in the post game. Speaking of that post game, he seems very defeated. I mean, I'm trying not to read too much into it. He just seems very, I understand it, but you need to be prepared for this, that you can have bad seasons and things can go wrong. That last play in overtime, though, I mean, he was asked about why they wouldn't kick it when it was 4th and 6. And he basically said he didn't have confidence in his kicker. He said, if we felt we had a better chance of getting the first down than making the field goal. I mean, you need to be able to make field goals at that distance. And quite frankly, you need to be able to get 6 yards when you need it. But 4th and 6, with the way Purdue's offense has been this year, I don't know. I didn't love it. I don't love the idea of kicking a field goal there either, but I do think you need to try to get points on the board and then maybe hold down a Northwestern team that had not scored much. They had only had a field goal since midway in the second quarter, right? Like, again, you have to look at how the game has gone. It's not just about what makes the most sense. It's about what makes the most sense in that moment. And Northwestern has, like I said, scored 3 points to that point since the middle of the second quarter. Maybe you say, let's kick the field goal and trust our defense here. I think, there's times to go for it. And then there's times to maybe say, we've been, that would have put Purdue at 20-3 since the 17-3 deficit. I don't know. I think you get points on the board there. It's easy to second guess now. And, I don't like to be that way because it's easy to do it after the fact. We don't have to make the decision. But I can tell you that in real time, I think most people thought they probably should have been getting points there. Not getting points in overtime in college is a bit of a problem. What else here? No commitment on quarterback in the future. He was asked about Card or Brown going forward. Wouldn't commit one way or the other. I imagine they'll use both. it's going to be ugly the next few weeks. So I think he knows he's going to have to use both. What else? I don't know. I don't have too much else. I think, Smiley Bradford, I believe he's a freshman. Great name. Did a nice job. Had some tackles. Almost had an interception. I think, you need breaks. You need things to go your way. And Purdue once again did not create any turnovers. Right? Like, I mean, if you create a turnover in this game, probably swings it. Right? This was the last good chance. This was the last good chance for Purdue to win a game. I mean, let's be honest. They could win, right? Stranger things have happened, but man, what do you got left? You got Michigan State on the road, you got Ohio State on the road, you got Penn State at home, and you got Indiana on the road. I think I have that right. 3 of the last 4 on the road, against highly ranked teams, except for Michigan State. So yeah, it's going to get ugly, folks. I hope you're ready for it. Chris B says that he's never been so happy for a Monday like the coming one. I guess that's because of basketball. I'm assuming that's what you're bringing that up, not because you think anything's going to happen with the coaching staff. There's people still talking about that. I'll tell you this too, that for those of you who, are on the Fire Walters bandwagon, there's no reason to expect, right? If it hasn't happened now with the bye week and all that, it's not going to happen, right? He's going to get the season. There's no doubt about that. And I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago, if they were to win a game or two or show fight even like this, but a couple more times against these opponents, he probably earns himself another year. I know people don't want to hear that. But if they continue to just look so sloppy and just not knowing assignments, I don't know. I don't know what to predict. And we try to stay away from that game here until we've heard something official. That's really all I had. Let's take a look quick. Who's here? We've got Jay Granate from Germany. So thanks for coming. You notice I'm using the Restream interface because I'm not as technically savvy as Boiler Dad. He's able to go live directly from the YouTubes, and it's never allowed me to do that. So I'm cheating and using the Restream interface. Anish was asked if he wanted to do the post game with me. He is once again traveling. Anish has more boys weekends than anyone I know. So if you're one of Anish's boys, then maybe he'll give you a weekend. Karen Grulak, I'm going to say her name wrong. I'm just going to say Karen. Karen, you're here. Good to see you. Chris Curtis says it's truly a handsome hour. I mean, obviously, this is a step up, right? There's no filters on. This is all. I woke up like this, as they say. Ryan Lewis says fire Hazel. That's funny, Ryan. I get where you're going. Gerald says that this team does nothing well, not even the fundamentals. I would agree. I think you've got it's again, we're not just blaming the coaching because we like the players, if that makes sense. It's not the only reason we do that. It's because of things like that. We don't think, I can say this for everyone here at BS, we don't think this team lacks talent to such a degree that they should be 1-7, right? Or that they should be non-competitive as often as they've been. They were competitive today, but they've been non-competitive so often. And today's loss shot themselves in the foot a couple times, a couple bad defensive. They let Northwestern get third downs all the time. And Northwestern's been one of the worst teams, I think, at getting third downs. Third down efficiency, Northwestern was 9 of 16 and 2 of 2 on fourth. That's, if you combine those two between third and fourth down, they were 11 of 18. I mean, the fact that you only lost in overtime by 6 is amazing, that you let a team on third and fourth be 11 for 18 and get 19 first downs too, right? There's so what we go back to here is agreeing that they don't do the fundamentals well. What does that come back to? Come back to coaching. You can work on fundamentals. You can work on basics. You can work on positioning and assignments. The guy getting loose, Hyman getting loose on the game winning. If you watch that replay, he doesn't do anything tricky. He doesn't do that thing where sometimes a guy will flare out and just kind of stand there like he's in the flat and then take off, where a defense might lose track of him because it's okay, he's in the flat and the quarterback's not going there, right? He just wiggles down the right side. I don't want to call it a go route. It was just it was almost like he said, here's where I'm going, guys. And Purdue just watched him go down the field and they made a nice pass to him. So when you're relying on a team to just throw a lousy pass and that's how you're hoping to get away with stuff, I mean, you're not going to win very often. Jay Tent says Walters had 2 weeks to prepare and put that product on the field. It's fair complaint also. I mean, I said that about – that's exactly how I felt after Notre Dame, because I said, I know they had Indiana State, but you knew you were going to win that, right? You had as much time as you needed to prep for Notre Dame, and you were as ill-prepared as you could possibly be. So I don't think we should be surprised that having 2 weeks to prepare led to this. I mean, I would say, Jay, that they looked better today than a fair number of their games, right? You were in it. You were tied. You put it to overtime. And honestly, even though they were down in the first half, it was still closer than that Illinois first half felt. So, that one took a superhuman second half for Purdue to come back. This one just took some solid play. I mean, Purdue didn't do anything magical in the second half. They got, 10 points in the second half? So nothing crazy. They were right there. Despite all those things I'm saying, they were right there. And the other thing I'll point out to you is they forced a punt with 1:41. Well, I guess it was 1:52 to go. They forced Northwestern to punt. Northwestern has used all their timeouts at this point, which I think there were 10 minutes to go in the game. And Northwestern had used all 3 timeouts, which you look at that and you think that might come back to haunt them. That always comes back to haunt teams, right? That you can't stop the clock late. You can't make a decision. You can't get ready for a field goal. You just have to go, right? That's never what you want. So you think of all the things that were tilted sort of in Purdue's favor. They force a punt with 1:52 to go. It's got, after the play and the hang time, and it's 1:41 to go. Bounces into the end zone. Purdue gets a touchback. Purdue now needs to move the ball about 50 yards to get into a reasonable field goal range. And they go 3 and out in 50 seconds. They went from, I'm doing this all from memory because I was at the time I was watching and saying, boy, this is insane. Like, they went from 1:41 to 51 seconds. And Northwestern obviously didn't need to use any timeouts because they didn't have any. So Purdue turned the ball back to them in 50 seconds. So Northwestern really, if they had any sort of luck on that last drive, could have gotten themselves into field goal range. And they did throw the Hail Mary that landed on the 15. That was such an embodiment of, man, 2 really mediocre to bad teams. Like, they talked about, this will be a Hail Mary now. And I thought, he can't reach the end zone. And he threw it from the 50 and it landed at the 15. So Purdue, Northwestern football, everybody. Sean says, big sad. Yes. Greg McManus says, one of the prime examples of coaching malpractice. 3rd down, D was bad. The turnover decision was awful. Oh, the timeout or turnover decision? Timeout decision was awful. Made the worst offense in the league look competent. Yeah, I already mentioned that, Greg. That is absolutely correct. Over 400 yards of total offense for one of the worst offenses in the Big Ten. Boilers 012 says B-ball is upon us. Yes. Gerald says he misses Coletto and Akers. You don't mean that, Gerald. I know you don't mean that. What's his buyout again? Chris B says, people talk about this stuff all the time. It's not as high as a lot of coaches are. It's not as crazy as you'd think. Purdue can eat it. I mean, no matter what you hear from people, if they decide to move forward, we're not going to have a telethon for Purdue. Like, they can't keep making mistakes like that, but if they decide to move forward, they'll figure that out. There's a lot of money flowing in. I'm not too worried about that. If that's not going to be, I don't think Babinski's going to let that be. This isn't Burke era where you keep a guy because you don't want to deal with that. Patrick Goschel says that was ugly. It's supposed to be our game against our peer. Given our record against Northwestern the last decade, are they really our peer? It's a fair question. I mean, Northwestern has beaten Purdue quite a bit in the last decade. I don't know off the top of my head, but I would say probably six out of the last 10, 7 in the last 10, something like that. Brom had trouble against them. Weirdly, I remember Rondell Moore's, I believe, if I'm doing this right, his coming out party, his first game where he was very good. I think Purdue still lost by like double digits. I think it was an opening night game to start the season. Weirdly, a Big Ten game, which happens every now and then. And I think they lost like 33-20 or something like that, right? Like to a middling Northwestern team. So you're right. But yeah, they are Purdue's peer. I think they're Purdue's peer. I think because if you go back the last few years, I know it's hard to believe this now, but Purdue's been to 3 bowl games in the last 6-7 years. Been to a Big Ten title game, won 8, won 9. Like, Northwestern would do that occasionally under Fitz when he wasn't enabling sexual assault. Oh, sorry, was that allowed? But they would also have some stinker seasons in there too. So yeah, I think they're a Purdue peer. I think that's fair. The Noodle asks if I lost rock, paper, scissors. More or less. Yeah. I didn't go to the game, and I was available. So yeah, that's kind of how it works now. Patrick Goschel says we've had the lead for approximately 5 minutes since the ISU game. I hadn't thought about it that way. That's a really good point. They led. When did they lead? They led against Illinois, right? They led for, I don't think it was even 5 minutes. Maybe you mean 5 minutes of real time because they led in the final minute and 40, something like that against Illinois. Yeah, it was under minute 20. I remember thinking that game was over when Purdue scored, got the onside, and then scored again. I thought, that was it. That's it. You know, you do that thing with your brain where most games you're watching, you're like, oh, there's time. There's time. I remember watching that and being like, it's over. It's over. Because that Illinois team was reeling, right? Purdue had punched them in the jaw so many times that I was like, well, there's no way Purdue's going to give them the ball and they're going to come down and tie this game. And then they did. But I think they had so I think Purdue had the lead for like maybe 90 seconds. I'm trying to think of who else they would have had a lead against. Nobody, right? They didn't lead against Wisconsin, right? No, I think Patrick, you've actually overestimated it. I think they had the lead for maybe 90 seconds. But Zach Young said, I personally can't wait for future Purdue head coach James Franklin. Bite your tongue, Zach. We do not like him here. Well, I won't say that. There's at least one person at Boiled Sports who is the resident Franklin defender. I won't tell you who that is because it doesn't matter. But yeah, most of us here would not want that for lots of reasons that I don't need to go into. Not just on-field reasons. Ryan Lewis says, the players are missing the tackles, not Walters. However, he's coaching how to tackle. You're right. And I think it's a fair point to say they're not playing well. And you know what? A lot of these guys are paid now. So if you want to, there's a lot of people now crossing that line and saying, well, guys are paid. They're paid. They're professional athletes now. They're still not, right? And they're still choosing to wear your school's colors. So, we don't quite go that far. But I do hear this point. But I do think, again, it comes back to coaching guys up, coaching guys to exceed their talent, to not be worse than their talent. Because I think that's what you're seeing right now. And I think a lot of the successful Purdue years, Purdue would overcome a talent gap between them and some of their opponents. Karen says it's disgusting, not worth discussing. Fair point. The Noodle says, I bet there are bright spots during the plague too. Wow, it's getting dark in here. Schemes working on fundamentals, Greg says. Yeah, we should be. Mark Garrity. This is what happens in a bad season. He says, during game today, I went grocery shopping. I changed the headlights on my truck. Did you change them to Christmas lights? What did you change them to? Oh no, you just mean changed them out. You've had a truck a long time when you have to change the headlights. I will say, if you've had a truck long enough that the headlights have burnt out, that's not a new truck. He also did some laundry. It's the type of game I was finding things to do. We've had this conversation too, where it's a bad season when you are not even going to enjoy your Saturday. It's college football day, and if you have other plans, of course, you have family plans, your kids have things to do. You got to do those things. But when you're sitting there looking for stuff to do instead of watching Purdue in the middle of the day, oof, that says a lot, right? Let's see here. Ryan Lewis says Hudson Card is bad. I don't agree with that. I think I think he's fine. I think if people expected him to be, the level that maybe Texas thought he was going to be when they recruited him, sure, he's not that good. But he, to me, is far from the problem here. I've said this all year. I don't think he's the problem. He was 21 of 37 for 267 and a touchdown and no picks. That's not setting the world on fire, but that's not the problem. That's not the reason Purdue's losing, I don't think. So, yeah. The defense stinks, Gerald says. Can't stop anybody. Nancy saying, glad to hear your calm breakdown and mentioning the positive. Oh, I appreciate you saying that, Nancy. The kicker's been pretty good this season, Boiler Bugle says. Well, not according to coach. He did not have confidence in him. Let's see. What else here? Carl says, I'm so disappointed in Ryan Walters. I wanted and really thought he would forge a Purdue football legacy of excellence. I think a lot of people did. I think a lot of people thought getting that young guy on the way up, you're not alone there, Carl. I think there were people who were worried, us included, when it was a guy who no head coaching experience. That's the thing you always worry about, right? And we've said this, we've hammered this on our podcast. He didn't build the staff right. If you want to come down on something and you want to say, look, a guy has to learn, he has to get better. 4 wins in the first year. I'll keep saying 4 wins in the first year when you had a cupboard that had been cleaned out because Brom left and stopped recruiting, right? Going 4-8 in that first year, that was very good. I'm sorry, that's a good coaching job. But you need to follow it up with something. And we've said this all year. They could be 3-9 this year, and you wouldn't be furious, right? If it was the right kind of if you showed something. Tough schedule. I'd say between 3 and 5 wins, you could have kept the fan base thinking, yeah, all right, it's coming. Instead, they look non-competitive. So we've talked about him not building the staff right. He didn't have like the senior guy. He didn't have a mentor. He didn't have a guy who had been a head coach. He didn't. And we've said too, if you want to blame Babinski, yeah, that's on him too. You need to say to him, look, I know you've never done this before, so you need to do this, or I'm going to have this person help advise you, or we have this committee that helped do the coaching search that can help you. I don't know what it is. I don't have all the answers here, but it clearly wasn't built well because he more or less was helping with all the defensive work. Then he had to take over offensive play calling. He fired the offensive coordinator. And then there are people saying, well, if you fired Walters, literally who coaches the team? And that's a legit concern. There are also some saying at this point, what difference does it make, right? Because you're probably going to be a 1-win team. So you're going to be a 1-win team either way. The carousel hasn't started for coaching searches. So for those of you who think, oh, we could get a jump on it. Us here, we're always thinking about that. There's no, you haven't been seeing that happening yet. You haven't seen, and I've heard some people say, oh, but let's be the first. Let's be the first one to get out there. And I'll tell you, what worries me about that? Then Purdue becomes some coach's safety school, right? Because they know, I could take that. That's not a bad gig. Yeah, Big Ten, not a bad job. There's some money there. But let me see what else is out there. I do think that actually is a risk, right? So I think, if that's going to happen, I don't think there's any huge advantage to doing it now. Again, I'll say that, we don't like to call for that kind of stuff, but if you're one of the people who thinks it has to happen, I think you just need to let the season play out and see. Look at the full body of work. 2 years is not a lot. So let's look at the full body of work. Not too much more here. So Jason says we will find out. I didn't hear this. He said we'll find out if Dienert was right with his comments this week about how he thought that this game would determine Walter's future. Dienert has been trying to generate good content. I'll give him that. He said he thought if they got beat, what was it? The game before, was it Illinois? Yeah. He thought if they got beat by Illinois badly and then pounded by Oregon that he would potentially get fired then. And now he's saying maybe this game determines it. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. We'll see. I will go back to what I said at the beginning. My on-record comment is I think he's got the season without a doubt, frankly. Oh, Jason has updated us that he knows how to get to my heart. UCLA is beating Nebraska 10-0 in the second. Let me take this moment. You all know me. You've watched me, I think. I have a little special place in my heart to hate on Nebraska. Nebraska is 0-6 under Matt Rule when they had a chance to clinch a bowl. This is the stat hour. 0-6. They were 5-3 last year and lost out 4 straight. They were 5-1 this year and they've lost 2. They're 5-3. Now, after this, this was their last really good chance, right? This was their they have UCLA. Let me just bring them up. I was telling the guys this week. Here's what's funny about this. Nebraska, who is 5-3 right now. They have a home game against UCLA. They'll probably win that, even though they're down 10-0. If they lose it, though, they then go to USC. I know USC's not been great, but Nebraska having to go out there, they have to play Wisconsin, who's playing much better, and they got to finish at Iowa. It's possible that they'll go 5-7 again. And oh my gosh, now I've just got to find the little things that entertain me in life, and that's one of them. Patrick Goschel corrects me and says, sorry, I keep clearing my throat. I didn't bring water in here with me. I brought coffee in because, it's a cooled late afternoon in my Purdue mug that now you'll all want. Look, it's got a Grand Prix card on it. He says that Purdue had the lead for 4 minutes against Nebraska and about a minute against Illinois. As usual, I'm incorrect. Well done, Patrick. Good point. I forgot. They had 4 minutes against Nebraska. Oh, that's right. Wasn't it 3-0 or 6-3 or some crap like that? Right. Let's see what else. Paul Richwine says maybe Jeff Saturday's available as head coach. That's a good idea. Gerald says anyone who's committed to Purdue will be rethinking it. I never know how to predict that stuff, right? Sometimes guys commit to a coach. I will tell you, I remember there were a lot of guys who absolutely loved and would just freaking lay down on the tracks for Darrell Hazel. Believe it or not, there were players who just loved the man. Maybe because he gave him a chance at a Big Ten school that maybe they shouldn't have been at. But the point is, guys commit to coaches, especially nowadays. It's got nothing to do with the school. So if guys like Walters and they like the staff, you might hold on to him. I don't know how to predict that stuff. Yes, my head is this exactly what you're saying, Gerald, that Purdue recruits or commits would rethink it. I would look at this season personally and I would rethink it. And I also worry about the transfer portal, whether they kept Walters or not. I worry about the season. Like last season ended and had some positive feeling, and Scorton ran out and Burks ran out like immediately the next day after playing a big game against IU. They just were gone, which shows you the current state of college football. That's just what it's like. So if you had guys bailing then, hard to not imagine you might see that this year too. I think I'm going to wrap it up. People talking in here about Hugh Freeze, Ryan Day. I mean, let's pump the brakes here, folks. Mohill 93, he got sunburnt for nothing. Yeah, but you were outside. You were under this crisp November sky. You are an American. I shouldn't assume that. Maybe you're not. Greg McManus just likes to lean into my Nebraska hate. He says their schedule was front-loaded with home and easy games. Yeah, they've got some easy games left. Their schedule is not tough at any point. This is an 8-9 win, easy season for a good Nebraska team. By the way, I'll give you one more stat on Nebraska. Their last winning season. Does anybody know? Off the top of your head? Their last winning season? In your head, you're probably going to think, I don't know, 19, 20, 18. Nope, 2016, friends. That's 8 years ago. Was the last time they won. And they won 9 games that year. And you know who the coach was? Mike Riley. Think of how funny that is, that they ran that guy out of town. And that was the last guy to win 9. Last guy to have a winning season. It's absurd. It's absurd. Purdue has been unquestionably better, a better program in that time. Think about that. Ed Albanese, the gummy bear king of Chicago. I don't know where. I'm thinking of Abe Froman. He says, what happens next? How do we handle the situation? Ed, I don't think anything happens. I really don't. I'll just keep saying it. I think nothing happens. I think Purdue plays out the season. If he got fired during the season, I think it would be with a game or something to go. I don't think they're going to do it with 4 games left. I just don't think so. Ed tells me he likes this format. We should do it more often. I guess he means just me. Basically, Ed, what I'm going to say is you prefer me over Boiler Dad. That's just like, it's like a parent thing. Like you prefer one over the other and you never want to admit that. But I'm just going to say that you're on record saying that you prefer this experience with me. Anyway, the Noodle got it right, by the way, 2016. That was Nebraska's last winning season. So we're at 33 minutes, and I appreciate you all joining me. Once again, thanks to AJ's on Vine, by the fire station, as Boiler Dad likes to say. But just on Vine is fine too. You know where AJ's is. Just go and tell them we sent you there, because I will say that they told us that people come in and say, hey, I'm literally here because Boiler Sports said we should check this out. So that keeps them sponsoring us and gives us the funds to put together this high production value. So we appreciate that. We appreciate them. We appreciate you. And then, of course, our friends at Home Field Apparel. Bowl 25 at checkout. Get 15% off your first order. They got some cool stuff. You know that, though. Purdue's next game. See, this is the funny thing is I barely pay attention. At this point, I'm like the rest of you where I'm like, I know who's left. But let me think. Oh, next weekend. They go to Ohio State next weekend. Little inside baseball. Anish and I were going to go to that. We had even held an Airbnb and everything. We were going to go. My son wanted to go. He's got a friend who he goes to school with whose dad is very much like, he's an Ohio State alum. They go out to Ohio State games all the time. They wanted us to come tailgate with them. And at the start of the season, I thought, yeah, let's do that. That'd be fun. I know they'll lose, but that'd be fun. And as this has played out, I don't want to be there. So Purdue plays at Ohio State next week. It is going to be as ugly can be. I'm confident saying that. It actually reminds me of something I didn't mention earlier. Purdue was a favorite in this game. I don't know if you all know that. When you look back in a year or two and you're like, wow, when was the last time Purdue was a favorite? Weirdly, they were a favorite today. The line opened at Northwestern 1.5 or 2 beginning of the week. By game time, I think it was 1.5 or 2 for Purdue, which is bizarro to me. I don't know how Purdue could be favored against anybody at this point, but they were. So very weird. Nobody had confidence in Northwestern. And yet you and I, all of us, you knew how this was going to turn out. right? I don't know how many of you went in there thinking, oh yeah, Purdue's the better team here. I don't know who would think that. And the short answer is because it's not based on that, right? Never forget, betting lines are based on betting activity, right? That's why they swing. That's why they change. It has nothing to do with who the better team is or who people think is going to win. It has to do with where people are placing their money. Never forget that. All right. Thanks, everyone. 35 minutes. That's a quick cast. In your face, Boiler Down. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate you being here. Have a safe week. Have a happy week. Enjoy the great weather most of the country has been having, this kind of extended, really nice fall. Get outside, do something fun that takes your mind off of this. And remember, if you're frustrated about Purdue football and that's the thing that's aggravating you, then you're pretty fortunate. That's how I try to think, is that we all have things going on in our lives. But if this is a thing that we can kind of all get together and vent about, then we're doing okay.